Me and my girl were about to Netflix and chill when she asked, "Do you want to see my sister's new hamster?" "Nah, I'm good," I responded before leaning in. She threw the popcorn at my face. "I knew my family was right about you. You're disgusting." Before I could respond, she stormed out the front door and slammed it so hard my dog jumped. Like, what in the bomba clot? I figured maybe she was just hangry or something. So I waited until she was home before door-dashing her wing stop. 30 minutes later, she blocked me on everything. After a few hours, the post-nut clarity finally hit, and I realized I was a shitty BF. Amelia was obsessed with animals, and I turned down meeting her sister's new pet for no reason. So first thing in the morning, I adopted this tiny brown hamster. I named him Brownie because I'm not creative and he was brown. But when I knocked on her apartment door, my entire body went cold. Her ex-boyfriend Tommy was standing there in basketball shorts and a wife-beater vest. He looked at me, looked at the hamster, and just said, "Sorry, bro," before slamming the door in my face. I stood there like an idiot processing what just happened. Brownie squeaked. Not only did I just lose the love of my life over a rodent, but we were supposed to sign a lease in 2 days, one that we already put down a $30,000 non-refundable deposit for. I was about to literally be homeless in a week. I called my female friend Luciana because she always knew what to do, but the second I told her what happened, she went completely silent. The bad kind of silent. "I can't believe you just did that." "Did what?" It felt like the world was playing some sort of cruel prank on me. Just, "How fast did you say no when she asked about the hamster?" "Like straight away, but okay, wow," she responded in this extremely disappointed voice. "You aren't who I thought you were." "All men really are the same," was the last thing she said before hanging up. I tried to text her, but my messages were green instead of blue. 48 hours until I lost 30 grand. But I had an ace up my sleeve. I was still logged into Luciana's Instagram. I used it to check Amelia's profile. Every single story post from the last 24 hours had Tommy in it, at her favorite coffee place, walking her dog, that stupid peace sign pose he always does. But this didn't make sense. If she wanted to dump me, why not just tell me instead of using some weird hamster excuse? And that's when I saw it. Her Amazon wishlist still had couples Halloween costumes that she added 3 days ago. Her Pinterest board was updated literally yesterday with fall wedding ideas with Tiernan. She wasn't prepared for our breakup. The hamster thing wasn't just an excuse. I was just about to try and text Amelia again when my phone rang. It was my mom. "I can't believe what you did. I'm extremely disappointed in you." "Mom, wait." Beep. The line went dead. My hands were shaking when another text came through from my boy Malik. "Dude, you really messed up. She's devastated." And of course, when I tried to ask what the freak was going on, he ghosted me. 1 day left until I was homeless. I waited until morning to text Lucy, her cousin who always thought I was funny. I just cut straight to the point. "Does your sister need help taking care of her hamster?" The typing bubbles appeared and disappeared 5 times before she finally wrote, "Tiernan, are you okay? What the hell are you talking about?" It felt like someone had slapped me across the face. Turns out there was never any hamster. Even Brownie was squeaking louder than usual. I had less than a day to go until the lease signing. I was losing my mind driving in circles around town when I spotted her car at the Shell station. Except she wasn't pumping the gas. Tommy was. He walked over and actually dapped me up with this weird, sympathetic look on his face. "Hey, no hard feelings, broski." I left him hanging. "Hard feelings about what exactly?" He laughed, but not in a mean way. More like he felt sorry for me. "Listen, bro, it took me months to figure out their loyalty test system. They have a weird rule where every family member has to ask their partner for one weird favor. Say no once, and you're out forever." I resisted the urge to clock him. "What are you talking about?" "The hamster was your test. I failed mine 2 years ago, but I studied up, came back, said yes to everything. Been back with Amelia for 26 hours now." Brownie was staring at me through his cage like he understood the irony. Tommy patted my shoulder. "Good luck, man. She's already picked out rings with me." I sat in that parking lot for an hour with Brownie judging me. That's when I realized something. Tommy knew exactly how their system worked because he'd studied it, but he'd also just given me the playbook. And if there's one thing I'm good at, it's playing games once I know the rules. What I did next changed everything. I pulled out my phone right there in my car and started Googling like crazy, while Brownie watched me from his little travel cage on the passenger seat. My fingers were shaking as I typed in stuff like family loyalty tests relationships and weird boyfriend tests families do. And honestly, I couldn't believe what I was finding. There were entire Reddit threads about this exact thing, forums with thousands of posts from guys and girls who'd been through similar situations with their partners' families. Some families had rules about always saying yes to favors, others had tests about money or time or priorities, and the more I read, the more my stomach felt sick. I screenshotted everything that seemed relevant, especially posts about how to pass these tests or get second chances, because maybe there was still hope if I could figure out their specific system. After 20 minutes of reading horror stories about people losing their relationships over refusing to cat sit or missing a random cousin's birthday party, I knew I needed insider information. I texted Lucy since she'd always been cool with me and asked if we could grab coffee to talk about something important regarding her family. She replied pretty fast saying she could meet, but only had 15 minutes because she had plans with her sister, which made me remember that whole fake hamster thing that started this mess. I drove straight to the coffee shop near campus where we agreed to meet, and Lucy was already there when I walked in, looking confused about why I wanted to talk. I got us both drinks and sat down across from her, trying to figure out how to explain this without sounding completely insane. I told her everything Tommy had said about the loyalty tests, and how each family member asks for one weird favor, and if you say no, you're out forever. Lucy's face went from confused to shocked as she listened, and she kept shaking her head like she couldn't believe what she was hearing. She said she'd heard her aunt mention something about testing boyfriends, but always thought it was just jokes about making sure guys were serious about the relationship. Then her face changed like she was remembering something, and she told me about how her mom once asked her ex-boyfriend Jake to help move furniture at 3 in the morning. Jake had complained about the time being ridiculous and said he had work the next day, which seemed totally reasonable to Lucy back then. But within a week, the whole family turned cold on Jake, stopped inviting him to things, and kept telling Lucy she deserved better until they eventually broke up. Lucy said she never understood why everyone got so weird so fast, but now it made sense if he'd failed some kind of test. I asked her if she knew about any other tests or rules, but she seemed genuinely lost about the whole system existing. After Lucy left for her sister thing, I sat in my car for a minute processing everything before driving to Luciana's apartment because I needed answers from someone who clearly knew about this whole situation. I knocked on her door for like 5 minutes before she finally opened it, looking super annoyed, probably because she'd blocked me and here I was showing up anyway. I explained everything about the loyalty test system and how I didn't know I was tested when Amelia asked about the hamster, but Luciana just stood there shaking her head. She said knowing about it now didn't change the fact that I failed, and a good boyfriend would have said yes without needing to know it was a test. Then she dropped another bomb on me by admitting she was supposed to test me too, but hadn't gotten around to it yet. Her test was going to be asking me to skip the playoff game next week to help her move a couch or something equally stupid and trivial. She said the family had a group chat where they coordinated everything and shared results about how boyfriends responded to their tests. I literally begged her to let me see the group chat from her phone, and after a lot of back and forth, she finally gave in and showed me the messages from 2 days ago. There it was in black and white. Amelia's mom had typed that I failed the hamster test hard and didn't even hesitate before saying no. Everyone in the chat started sharing their disappointment, saying things about how they knew something was off about me and how Amelia deserved someone who would prioritize family. The worst part was seeing a message from Aunt Sabine suggesting they should give me another chance since I didn't know the rules of their system. But Amelia's mom shut that down immediately, saying a good boyfriend would naturally say yes to meeting family pets without needing to know it was a test. My stomach completely dropped when I scrolled through looking for Amelia's response to all these messages about me, but she never wrote anything back. She didn't defend me or agree with them, just complete silence while her family planned my relationship's execution. I asked Luciana if there was any way to get another test or prove I could pass their system now that I understood it. She said once you fail, you're done forever, unless you do what Tommy did, which was disappear for a while, study the family, and come back reformed. But Tommy took 2 whole years to get back in their good graces, and I had less than 12 hours before losing $30,000 on that apartment. Luciana mentioned there might be one possible loophole, though, which was getting Aunt Sabine to advocate for me since she was basically the family matriarch. She said Sabine had veto power over test results and could overrule the others if she wanted to give someone another chance. But Luciana warned me that Sabine was tough and really didn't like outsiders trying to game their system or manipulate their way back in. I walked straight to my car and pulled out my phone to scroll through my contacts for Aunt Sabine's number that I still had from when I helped plan Amelia's surprise birthday party last year. My hands were shaking a little as I hit call and listened to it ring once before she picked up like she was waiting for my call. Tiernan was all she said in this super neutral voice that wasn't mean, but definitely wasn't friendly either. I explained that I needed to talk to her about the whole situation with Amelia and the tests, and she went quiet for a few seconds before saying she'd meet me at the diner on Maple Street in an hour. But I'm not interested in sob stories or you trying to manipulate me, she warned before adding that if I was genuine, she'd know, and if I wasn't, then I was wasting both our time. I drove to the diner and got there 20 minutes early, so I just sat in the parking lot, watching people come and go while trying to figure out what I was even going to say to her. When she finally showed up, she walked right past my car without looking and went inside, so I followed her to a booth in the back corner. She ordered coffee without even looking at the menu, and then stared at me with these sharp eyes that reminded me of a teacher waiting for you to explain why you didn't do your homework. Why did you say no to the hamster? She asked straight out without any small talk or warm-up. I took a deep breath and told her the honest truth that I just didn't think it was a big deal and that I was comfortable in the relationship and didn't feel like I needed to prove anything by meeting some pet. She actually laughed at that, which caught me totally off guard, and said it was the most honest answer she'd heard from someone who failed a test. Then, she started explaining how the whole test system began after her sister's husband left her for his secretary after 15 years of marriage, and how nobody saw it coming because he always seemed so perfect and did all the right things in public. The tests were designed to catch red flags early, because if someone won't do small favors for family, then they definitely won't be there for the big stuff when it really matters. She told me Tommy failed his test 2 years ago because he wouldn't drive Amelia's grandmother to bingo and claimed he was busy when really he was just sitting at home playing video games. I asked her what Tommy did to get back in their good graces, and she said he studied each family member super carefully and learned all their values and what mattered to them, then came back showing genuine change. Now he drives Grandma to bingo every single week without being asked and remembers every family member's birthday and brings thoughtful gifts and basically turned himself into the perfect family-oriented boyfriend. She looked at me with this serious expression and said she could see I was desperate about the lease situation, but desperation wasn't enough to prove anything. She needed to see actual change and not just someone trying to save money, and she'd be watching to see what I did next with this information. I thanked her for meeting me, and she just nodded and said good luck in a way that made it clear she didn't think I had much chance of fixing things. Walking back to my car, I checked my phone and saw 3 missed calls from Jessica at the leasing office, plus a voicemail saying if I couldn't confirm both signatures by 5 p.m. today, then I'd lose the deposit and the apartment would go back on the market immediately. My stomach dropped because it was already 2 in the afternoon, and there was no way Amelia was signing anything with me at this point. I sat in my car for a minute trying to think of what to do next when I remembered what Sabine said about showing genuine change and caring about things that mattered to the family. Amelia was obsessed with animals, so maybe if I showed I cared about that now, it would mean something even if it was too late for the lease. I drove straight to the animal shelter on the south side of town and walked in asking if I could volunteer right away. The coordinator looked confused by how urgent I was being, but said they always needed help and put me to work, cleaning kennels immediately without any training or orientation. The smell hit me right away, and I started scooping poop and hosing down the concrete floors while all these dogs barked and jumped at their cage doors. After about 30 minutes of cleaning, I pulled out my phone and took a selfie with some of the shelter dogs in the background, then posted it on Instagram with some caption about giving back to the community. Within literally 2 minutes, Luciana texted me just 3 words that made my stomach sink even more. "This is pathetic," followed by another message saying, "Stop trying so hard," which made me realize how obvious and desperate I must look to everyone who knew about the situation. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy, and I almost dropped it when I read what he wrote about seeing my shelter post and how it wasn't genuine, and also that Amelia knew I was using Luciana's account to watch her stories. I stared at the message for a second, then looked around at all these dogs needing actual help, and realized I'd been trying to game a system that was built to catch people exactly like me who were trying to game it. I deleted the Instagram post right away and went back to scrubbing the kennel floors because at least these dogs needed real help whether or not anyone was watching me do it. The smell of bleach was making my eyes water and my back hurt from bending over, but I kept going kennel by kennel until I got to this pit bull mix in the corner cage who wouldn't stop shaking. The poor guy was pressed against the back wall with his tail between his legs and these huge, scared eyes that made my chest tight. I put down the mop and just sat on the concrete floor outside his kennel for a while, not trying to reach for him or anything, just sitting there, letting him know I wasn't going anywhere. After maybe 10 minutes, he moved a tiny bit closer to the front of the cage, and I stayed completely still. Another 10 minutes, and he was close enough that I could slowly put my fingers through the chain link, and he sniffed them real careful before backing up again. The shelter coordinator walked by and mentioned they needed someone to foster him for a few weeks, while he built up confidence because the shelter was too loud and scary for him. Without even thinking about Amelia, or the tests, or any of that stuff, I said I'd do it even though I was about to crash on Jose's couch, which wasn't exactly ideal for a scared dog. She looked surprised, but started getting the paperwork ready while I pulled out my phone to call Jose. He answered on the 3rd ring, and when I asked if I could bring a foster dog when I stayed with him, he went quiet for a second, then said his landlord didn't allow pets at all, not even visiting ones. My stomach dropped because now I was about to be homeless with a hamster and committed to helping a dog who really needed somewhere safe to stay. Jessica from the leasing office texted me again, saying I had 2 hours left and needed confirmation, or she'd process the forfeiture, and my hands were literally shaking. $30,000 gone because I didn't want to meet a hamster that never even existed in the first place. I knew I had to try something, so I texted Amelia directly saying I knew about the tests. And I knew I failed, and I wasn't asking for another chance, just please sign the lease cancellation so we could get some of the deposit back through the early termination clause. She texted back immediately, and my heart sank when I read there was no early termination clause because I insisted we skip it to save $50 a month on rent. I remembered that conversation perfectly now, and how confident I was that we'd never need it because we were so solid. The pit bull was watching me through the kennel bars, and I felt like the biggest idiot in the world. I called my mom, desperate for any help. Maybe she could take over the lease or find someone else, but she said she couldn't afford it and reminded me she warned me about moving too fast with Amelia in the first place. She kept talking about how I never listen and always rush into things, and I just sat there on the shelter floor feeling everything crash down around me. With 90 minutes left before losing everything, I drove to Amelia's apartment complex, not even sure what I was planning to do. Her car was in the parking lot, and Tommy's truck was there too, and they were loading boxes into her trunk. She was wearing that old college sweatshirt I bought her last Christmas, and Tommy was carrying the lamp we picked out together at Target. They were talking and laughing about something, and she looked happier than she had in weeks. I sat in my car watching them load her stuff and realized she was probably moving in with him already. Tommy grabbed another box, and Amelia held the trunk open, and they moved like they'd been doing this together forever. Brownie was in his travel cage on my passenger seat, making these tiny squeaking sounds, and I wondered what the hell I was going to do with a hamster and potentially a foster dog when I didn't even have a place to live. The clock on my dashboard showed 87 minutes until the deadline, and I knew I had to do something, but watching them together made it clear that ship had sailed. Tommy closed the trunk and put his arm around Amelia's shoulder, and they walked back toward the building, probably to get more boxes. I thought about getting out and talking to them, but what was the point when she'd already moved on, and I was about to lose 30 grand? My phone buzzed with another text from Jessica asking for final confirmation, and I just stared at it knowing I was completely screwed. My fingers were shaking as I grabbed Brownie's travel cage and got out of my car because I couldn't just sit there and lose everything without trying something. I walked across the parking lot toward them, and Amelia saw me coming first, and her whole body went stiff like she was bracing for drama. Tommy turned around holding a box of what looked like kitchen stuff, and I could see my old coffee maker sticking out the top, which made my chest tight. I held up Brownie's cage and asked if she wanted him since I got him thinking about her and trying to fix things after the whole hamster mess. She looked at the little brown hamster running on his wheel, and her face did this weird thing where it got soft for maybe 2 seconds before going hard again. She said she couldn't take Brownie because Tommy was allergic to small animals, which made me want to laugh because that was probably why he failed his test 2 years ago. She told me I should keep him since I made the commitment to adopt him, and that was my responsibility now, not hers. Tommy set down the box and pulled me aside while Amelia went back inside the building, and I could smell his cologne, which was way too strong, like he dumped a whole bottle on himself. He said he felt bad about the deposit situation and offered to loan me $5,000 to help with immediate housing costs, but his eyes kept shifting around like he didn't really want to do it. I looked at him standing there in his stupid basketball shorts and told him no thanks, and asked him straight up if it was worth it spending 2 years studying their family's tests just to get back with someone. His face got tired looking, and he said some days he wasn't sure, but he loved her enough to play by their rules, which sounded like the saddest thing I'd ever heard. I walked back to my car with Brownie squeaking in his cage, and checked my phone to see 71 minutes left until the deadline, which made my stomach drop even more. I sat in the driver's seat and called Jessica to tell her I wouldn't be signing the lease, and to start whatever forfeiture process needed to happen, because I was done fighting this. Jessica surprised me by saying, "Wait, there might be one option. If I could find someone to take over the lease within 24 hours, the complex might approve a transfer with only a $5,000 transfer fee." That was way better than losing $30,000, so I thanked her and immediately started posting everywhere online about the apartment, offering a $1,000 incentive to anyone who could take it over today. Within minutes, my phone was blowing up with 3 responses from people interested in viewing it immediately, which gave me this tiny bit of hope. The first couple showed up 20 minutes later and loved the apartment and had perfect credit, but they wanted to move in next month, which didn't help me at all. The second person was this guy who couldn't afford it alone and kept asking if he could find a roommate later, which Jessica said wouldn't work for the transfer. The third guy gave me weird vibes and kept asking if Amelia would still be around the complex and if she was single now, which made me want to punch him. I was sitting in the leasing office ready to give up when Lucy texted saying her coworker just broke up with her boyfriend and desperately needed a place today. She said the girl had good credit and stable income and could meet us at the leasing office in 20 minutes if that worked. I told Lucy yes, please, and 22 minutes later this woman named Marina walked in with a cashier's check and perfect paperwork ready to sign immediately. Jessica processed the lease transfer right there, and I only lost $6,000 total instead of 30, which hurt, but didn't completely destroy my life. Marina shook my hand and said, "Thanks for the opportunity," and I handed her the keys, feeling like maybe I dodged the biggest bullet of my life. I was walking out of the leasing office when the front door opened, and Amelia walked in with Tommy, right behind her carrying a folder of paperwork. She stopped dead when she saw me, and her eyes went to Marina, who was still standing at the counter filling out her move-in checklist. Tommy looked between all of us and shifted his weight from foot to foot, while Amelia's face went through like 5 different expressions in 2 seconds. Marina waved at them, not knowing who they were, and went back to her paperwork while Jessica called them over to the other desk. Amelia kept looking back at me as she sat down, and I could see her trying to figure out how I managed to not lose everything without her help. I left without saying anything, and drove straight to Jose's place where he was already clearing out his spare room for me and Brownie. We spent the next 3 hours moving all my stuff from my old apartment using his truck, and by midnight I was sitting on an air mattress in his spare room with Brownie running around in his ball exploring the new space. Jose brought me a beer and mentioned his lease was up in 2 months, and if I could get my money right, we could find a place together since his roommate situation wasn't working out anyway. The next morning, I went back to the animal shelter because I'd promised to help with the scared pit bull, and spent 4 hours just sitting in his kennel reading a book while he slowly got used to me being there. Every day that week I showed up and did the same thing without taking any photos or posting about it anywhere, and by Friday he was actually letting me pet him. The shelter coordinator asked if I wanted to make it a regular thing, and I said yes, because watching that dog go from shaking in the corner to wagging his tail when he saw me felt better than any Instagram likes ever did. Saturday morning, a family came in looking for a dog and fell in love with him, and I helped them with the adoption paperwork, and they sent me a video later of him playing in their backyard. That same afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Sabine saying she heard I handled the lease situation maturely, and also heard I didn't take Tommy's money, which showed character. I read it twice, then deleted it without responding because I wasn't doing things for their approval anymore, and she could think whatever she wanted. 2 weeks went by with me just working my regular job and volunteering at the shelter on weekends when Luciana texted me out of nowhere apologizing for being harsh. She called me and explained the family's test system was getting out of control because Lucy's boyfriend just found out about the tests and dumped her immediately, saying he didn't want to deal with that kind of manipulation. Luciana said more people were starting to question if the tests were worth losing good relationships over, but Amelia's mom was doubling down, saying it was working exactly as intended to weed out weak partners. I told Luciana it was fine, and I understood why she reacted that way, but I was moving on with my life. A few days later, Malik hit me up saying he heard I was volunteering at the shelter, and his daughter really wanted a cat for her birthday. I met them at the shelter that weekend and helped them find this orange tabby, who immediately climbed into his daughter's lap and started purring. After the adoption, we grabbed beers at the sports bar down the street, and Malik admitted the whole hamster thing was weird, and he didn't know what to say when Amelia called him crying about it. He said he felt bad for ghosting me, but the family group chat was intense and he didn't want to get in the middle of it. About a month after the breakup, I was at the coffee shop near the shelter grabbing my usual order when I turned around, and Amelia was sitting alone at a corner table with her laptop and textbooks spread out. She looked up, and we made eye contact, and I could have just left, but instead, I walked over and asked if I could sit for a minute. She nodded and closed her laptop, and we talked for maybe 5 minutes about normal stuff like how her classes were going and how the shelter was. Then she said the tests might be getting toxic, but her family meant everything to her, so she went along with it even when it felt wrong. I told her I hoped she was happy with Tommy, and I actually meant it because holding on to anger wasn't worth it. She looked down at her coffee and said, Tommy passed every test perfectly now, but sometimes she wondered if he was actually being himself or just performing what her family wanted to see. She said he kept a notebook of every family member's preferences and studied it before family events, which seemed exhausting. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just wished her luck and left. A week later, Jose and I were looking at apartments online and found this 2-bedroom place that allowed pets and was actually in our budget. We went to see it the next day and signed the lease on the spot, and I officially adopted Brownie, plus got approved to foster dogs from the shelter. Moving day was chaos with Jose's stuff and my stuff, and Brownie freaking out about the new space. But by the end of the weekend, we had everything set up, and it actually felt like home. 3 months after the whole breakup disaster, my phone rang, and it was Aunt Sabine calling to tell me the family was reconsidering their test system after several relationships imploded, including Lucy's and 2 of Amelia's cousins. She said they were having a family meeting to discuss it, and asked if I'd be willing to share my perspective, as someone who went through it. I thought about it for maybe 2 seconds before politely declining, because that wasn't my problem anymore, and they could figure out their own mess without me. 2 weeks passed before Tommy's text popped up on my phone while I was cleaning kennels at the shelter. He sent this long message about how he and Amelia got engaged last week, but he was already tired. He said he kept a notebook of every family member's likes and dislikes and studied it before every dinner. He thanked me for not warning him because knowing would have made him run away before he got too deep. I deleted the text without responding and went back to hosing down the concrete floors. The next morning, I was at the dog park with this nervous beagle I was fostering when I spotted someone familiar. Amelia's mom was there with her white poodle doing laps around the fence line. She walked straight over to me and actually started apologizing about the whole test thing. She said after Lucy's boyfriend left and 2 of her nieces got dumped, she realized the tests were pushing away decent people. She said they kept guys like Tommy who were willing to fake everything just to stay in the relationship. The beagle started barking at her poodle, so I had to cut the conversation short and move to the other side of the park. 3 more months went by, and life got into this nice routine with work and volunteering and hanging with Jose. Then one Saturday at the shelter, this girl named Sarah started volunteering in the cat section. We got to talking while cleaning litter boxes, and she asked why I had a hamster. I told her the whole stupid story about the fake hamster test and losing $30,000. She laughed so hard she had to sit down on the floor next to the cat cages. We started getting coffee after our volunteer shifts, and she told me her family was super normal. Her parents just asked normal stuff, like helping with groceries or fixing their computer. No secret tests or group chats rating boyfriends or weird power games. 6 months after the whole Amelia disaster, we were officially together, and it felt easy in a way things never did before. Looking back at everything now, I can see losing that $30,000 taught me something important. Some games aren't worth winning if you have to lose yourself to play them. Brownie's still here in his cage next to my bed, chirping at night. Jose turned out to be a solid roommate who actually does his dishes. The shelter work gives me something meaningful to do on weekends. Sarah thinks the hamster story gets funnier every time I tell it to someone new. Sometimes the biggest win is knowing when to stop playing and just live your actual life. Thanks for letting me wonder about all these strange twists and turns with you all. It's been really interesting sharing my thoughts. Like the video, it helps more than you think.